Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Dave Albin. And I'm so happy that you said yes to our interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good considering that my area was devastated by the Hurricane Helene. So
Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
nice to hear, but you are here, you made it, and the internet connection is working. I'm so happy, and I would love to introduce you to the audience, of course. So, you were born in 1954 in Hollywood, California, faced early challenges, including addiction, but turned your life around after joining Alcoholics Anonymous, or the word is challenging, in 1988. A transformative firewalk at the Tony Robbins seminar in 1995 led you to work as Robbins' Firewalk Captain for nearly 20 years. In 2014, you founded Firewalk Productions LLC, and you have since worked with top organizations like NASA, Google, and Chick-fil-A, how do you pronounce this? Helping people overcome fear and unlock their potential. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Dave Albin.
hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And my first question is, how did your first firewalk experience with Tony Robbins in 1995 transform your life and influence your future career path?
Well, a lot of it is what led up to the Firewalk. There was a lot going on from the standpoint that I had been introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1988. I had insomnia. And so I was up late one night in 1988, shortly after I got sober, and I watched an infomercial by Tony Robbins. And so that was my first introduction to Tony Robbins, though I was pursuing the personal development industry. And so I bought a program. It was called Personal Power. And it was a program that you did at home. So they sent you a big box, and it had these little white things in there called cassette tapes. And so I went through the program. I did what Tony taught me to do, and it worked. And then 7 years later, he came to my area in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, and he was there for a live event, and I decided to go. However, I decided I was not going to do the Firewalk. That didn't make any sense to me. It sounded pretty crazy, and because fear, Caroline, had influenced most of my life, just about every decision I made. Fear was taking things away from me, if you will. Don't do that. Don't do this. Fear, 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 if you will. And I don't know. I got some help from one of Tony's people that night. And the next thing I know, I firewalked a little after midnight, at that event. And it was literally, without a doubt, one of the most life-changing moments that I'd ever experienced. Because I walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees, and I did not burn myself. So the question I asked myself is, okay, so how can you walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees and not burn yourself? What happened? What did I do? Because I walked on coals and I was successful at it, but I had no idea how I did it. And yet I did. And where it got really interesting was the next day. So I'm at an event. There's 3,500 people at this event, 3,500. And this is a 4-day event. We did the Firewalk on day one. And the next morning it's day two. And we're all standing in the foyer getting ready to go into the venue. And I'd never seen or witnessed anything like it in my life. Here's a group of people, 3,500 people. The night before, we didn't know anything about any of us, nothing. We could have cared less. And the next morning, I witnessed with my own eyes people getting along humanistically, unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my entire life. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen, because people were laughing and they're crying and they're talking about the Firewalk and they're talking about their life and they're talking about their fears. And again, the night before, we didn't know anything about any of us. And we really didn't know that much more the next day, but we were open to it. You know what I mean? We had shed that mask, if you will, like don't get to know me, kind of, being very standoffish. It was like, I'm going, so did we drink the Kool-Aid last night? And the answer is yes, we did. We drank the Kool-Aid. And then that just propelled me forward. And a few months later, I ended up going to work for Tony Robbins back in 1995, 1996. And then in 2003, having been in Tony's environment for many years, Tony asked me to take over all of his firewalks globally. And that happened in 2003. And then in 2005, I accepted that offer, by the way. He also paid for my family to go on the road with us. I was homeschooling at the time Tony asked me to take over. And I said, hey, this could be problematic because I homeschool my kids. I don't want to be away from them that much. And he stepped right up and said, so what if I pay to have your kids go on the road with us? Would that help? Well, yeah, of course it would help. And it did. And so next thing I know, my very first event with my family from the United States, we went to Sydney, Australia, which was, spectacular. And then in 2005, Tony and I set a world record. We put on the largest firewalk that had ever been put on in the world. We did that in London, and we firewalked 12,300 people. So that was in 2005. And then in 2014, I'm literally driving down the road and my phone rings and it's Google. And Google is calling me wanting to know, am I the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yes, I am. What can I do for you? And they said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a free agent. What you got? And the next thing I know, I was being hired by Google, and that was all going down in 2014. And Caroline, that's basically when when the company was started. Firewalk Productions was started in 2014, shortly after I got hired by Google. And I left Tony's organization. I retired. I'd been with him for almost 20 years, a little shy of 20 years. And my company just exploded, and we, no pun intended, but we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
Wow, I love that story. I didn't know this. And I have in mind now the 12,300 doing the firewalk in London as the world record, you said.
Yes.
Wow,
that's correct.
so amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question to you. Yeah, but you answered it already. What inspired you to start Firewalk Productions, and how do you believe firewalking empowers individuals and teams?
Well, as you said, I kind of answered part of that question. As far as I'm concerned, based on all of my time in the world of personal development, my career as an entrepreneur, I think we realize that what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. You're not just going to go to a seminar and sit in a seat and have somebody get on stage and talk and it change your life. That's not how it works. You have to get up. You have to do something. You have to engage. You have to challenge yourself. So that's really, firewalking itself has been around for over 1,000 years. Cultures all over the world have been using firewalking for a whole host of reasons. Most of it is a rite of passage. It's tribal. Yeah. And if you look at the Tahitians, the people of India, the Polynesians, the Hawaiians, the Native American Indians, the people of Spain, literally it's been done all over the world. And again, it's a cultural thing. And again, it's designed to bring people together. Let's say I have a company, and let's say I have 30 people working for that company. And let's say they're arguing over the political status of the world. Some of them hate Donald Trump. Some of them love Donald Trump. They're arguing over masks. They're arguing over vaccines. Well, what does that do to production? It drives it down. Well, when you drive production down, what happens? the profitability of your company follows suit.
Yeah.
And so how do you bring them back humanistically to get them to work together and appreciate each other and get along? Well, if you and as a CEO, if you're a business owner or CEO and you don't fix that, if there's a lot of dissension going on between your company and all its employees, it's going to cost you a fortune.
Yes.
And so the Firewalk fixes that, because the fire doesn't care. The fire could care less what you believe about masks or vaccines or the political status. It doesn't care about any of that. What it does is it reunites people and it brings them together and it gets them to appreciate each other, to love one another, to want to work with each other, to perform at a high level. And so, that's why the Firewalk is such a spectacular experience.
Wow. I think also, you talked about it unites people and also it transforms people, right?
For sure. Oh, yes. Yeah. And everybody has that moment before they Firewalk. If they're thinking about it, knowing they're going to do it or considering it, and all of a sudden when they get out there and they walk out there and they look down and they see those coals are bright red and the wheelbarrow's there full of coals and you can feel the heat coming off of that, it gets real fast, because, we're mammals. Yeah. We're taught to run from fire, not walk on it. So to be able to step through that fear and break through that fear, and once you do that, because then you can say, okay, if I can walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees and not burn myself, what else can I do?
Yes.
And so it just blows fear, because, fear is there to guide us. I get that. However, if fear becomes your jailer, then it's going to take everything away from you, because fear is a liar.
Yes.
Fear lies. It tells you that this is going to happen or that's going to happen, and you don't know that. We don't know that to be true. So that's why Tony Robbins has used firewalking for the last 3 decades, because he teaches people to break through their fear. And once they do that, then they can break through other fears as well.
Absolutely. So it you are encouraged, you know what's possible after you did this. And it reminds me, or not reminds me, like it's like walking on water, right?
Well, there's only one person that I've ever heard of that could walk on water.
Yes, but 12,300 with your Kool-Aid to walk on fire.
To walk on fire. Yeah, that's correct.
So beautiful.
It's a life-changing experience. That's all there is to it. If you go interview somebody that's been to a Tony Robbins seminar, or had they been to one of my seminars, and you ask them, so what was the number one takeaway that about that event? And they're going to tell you the Firewalk. They may not remember me. They may not remember my name. They may not remember what I said, but they're going to remember that moment. It's forever etched in their mind. Mm-hmm. It's never going to go away. And so again, it's a very, very empowering moment that can completely change and alter the course that somebody's going down.
Yes, I would say it's a deep emotional impact.
Very.
That's why it's remembered, right?
Correct.
Wow, I love that. From your work with major organizations, what common barriers do people face, and how does firewalking help them overcome these challenges?
Well, again, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. Mm-hmm. If you want to make a change in your life, number one, you have to face what's the story that you're telling yourself about why you can't have something. Okay, so let me answer it this way. Why don't people get what they want in life?
Because they think they don't have it.
That's a good answer. That's one of the number one answers. Mm-hmm. They don't think they're capable. They don't think they're worthy. They don't think they're smart enough. They're not old enough. They're not young enough. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the education. I don't have the background. They create a story about why they can't have it. And I'm here to say that in most cases, that story that they made up is not true. It's a lie. And so, for example, when I do my seminars, there's a picture on the screen behind me. I'm standing on stage and there's a big screen behind me, and I have a picture of a gentleman standing there. His name is Eric Weinmeier. And so I'll talk for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll ask the audience. I'll say, who here can tell me where my friend's standing on the screen behind me? And inevitably, somebody always knows the answer, right? They'll say, Mount Everest. And that's where he is. That's where he's standing. That's correct. And let me tell you something about Eric. He's climbed the 7 highest mountains on Earth. 7 continents, 7 mountains, and he got to the summit of every single one of those mountains. But here's what you don't know about Eric. He's blind. So I don't want to hear it. Whatever excuse you're sitting out there with, or why you can or can't do, no. It's total BS. If a man who's blind can climb the 7 highest mountains on Earth, that's what humans are capable of. You're no different. You were born into the world the same way Eric was. You had the same physiology. You got arms, you got legs, you got muscles. Well, guess what? So do you, except that he's doing it blind. Yes. Which is a little bit of, some people might say that, that's a little bit of a disadvantage. Maybe not. Maybe it was an advantage. I don't know.
Yes.
But it all comes down to his belief system. Same thing for you. It's your belief system. You created it. You're in charge of it. You articulate it to yourself, right? So the bottom line is, I don't care what happens to anybody. They create the story, whether it's good or bad. If something really good happens to you, you can create a story about it. If something really bad happens to you, you can create a story about it. Well, that story is going to influence how you operate in your life. The proof of that is Viktor Frankl. You know who Viktor Frankl is?
Yeah. Man's Search for Meaning, yes.
Yes. He wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. So what do we know about Viktor? He was in Auschwitz. He was in a death camp, in a Nazi death camp in Auschwitz. And he figured something out. I mean, they take everything from you. They took your clothes, you're naked, you're cold, you're not getting fed. Every single second you're there, you know you might be going to the chamber, to the death changer. So you could die at any minute, any second. And that's what you're living with. And so they take your hope away, they take your dignity away. But there was one thing that Viktor realized that they couldn't take from him. He would have to relinquish it. He would have to give it up. And that was his attitude. And so what came from that is a divine purpose. And that's really kind of a driving force in our life. It's our purpose. Because I believe the 2 most important times in someone's life is the moment they're born and the moment they figure out why. What is your purpose? And that was it. Because Viktor said, someone has to get out of here. Someone has to tell the story.
Oh, yes.
And he did. And so same thing with all your listening audience. Every single person in your audience right now can go and take their life wherever they want to go. It's all about purpose. You know, one of my mentors said something to me years ago, and I never forgot it. He said, Dave, every single human on this planet has 2 lives. And the second one starts when we realize we have only one.
Oh, yes.
So there's a book out there, it's all about a purpose-driven life. So that's really what it comes down to. You just have to step up and step through that.
Yes.
Bottom line. I was a drug addict and an alcoholic for much of my life. I never met my father, never met the man, never saw him, nothing. I was raised by parents that were alcoholics. So I could focus on all that and how bad that was. And, I chose not to do that. That's my choice. I get to choose. I get to decide. Not you, not my teachers, not my family. I choose what I want to tell myself and how I decide to empower myself. That's on me. A lot of people say, I grew up this and was my parents. And I don't care. Eric's blind. He climbed 7 highest mountains on Earth. So go tell that to him. You think he's going to believe that? No.
What a great story. So you shared with us not only your story, also Eric's story. And you said we always have the choice which story we tell and how we tell it, right?
For sure.
We can choose between at least two options, the negative, the positive, or the neutral side, whatever we want. But it's up to us. And this is the beautiful message. And I have one last question for you. And it is about your goals and intentions. What are your next projects?
So my next project right now is called Operation Do No Harm. So a few months ago, I was on a podcast. And after we recorded, we were just talking sidebar, and Natalia and I were talking, and she said, Dave, let me ask you something. Have you ever done a firewalk for veterans? And I said, you mean specifically? And she said, yeah. And I go, no, why? What's going on? And she said, well, I have 200 veterans. And you know what the suicide rate is, right? And I go, yeah, I've heard it's like 22 a day. She goes, David, that's not true. That's only if they leave a note. Mm-hmm. She said, most of them don't. The suicide rate's up close to 50 a day. And so I'm a veteran. I was raised by a veteran. And so it was like a gut punch. And I said, okay, I'm in. I will help you. I will do this. But give me a couple of days to think this through so that I can come up with some ideas. So I went to bed that night and I woke up in the middle of the night and it was as clear as like my whole life. Everything I'd ever done came to that moment that morning when I woke up and said, it's going to be called Operation Do No Harm. However, I believe there's 3 other categories here that need to be considered. Yes, veterans, very important, high suicide rate. What about first responders? There's a high suicide rate amongst them as well. What about single mothers? Single moms have it really hard. Now, I'm not saying single dads don't, but I think the men have a little bit of an advantage because they're always out in the workforce. Some of these women were stay-at-home moms. And now, they're single moms and they have to get into the workforce. So the bottom line is I was born to a single mom. And so I understand the struggle. So yes, we got vets, first responders, single mothers, and kids that have been abused and neglected. So I decided to create, in America, it's called a nonprofit. It's called a 501c3. And so now when a company hires me, I can give them an option. Meaning, like, let's say they call me and I'll say, so what are you guys doing? What's going on? Why are you considering the Firewalk? Well, we're launching a new product. Oh, great. Okay, so that's going to be the theme. Gotcha. Now, here's an option for you. How'd you like to pay it? How'd you like to get some really great attention in your community about your company? Meaning, what if we added 100 veterans or 100 single moms or 100 kids or 100 first responders, and then we'll invite them, we'll include them in your company with all that. Your company will, play the role in helping save their life, and then you'll get all the recognition for it. You'll get all the credit. And so it's just and by the way, they can make a donation. Yeah. So it creates a write-off for the company, for the corporation as well. So, so Operation Do No Harm now is working in connection with Operation Do No Harm and Firewalk Productions. And so that's to answer your question, that's my next mission. That's my vision. That's where my purpose is going.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. I love those nonprofit endeavors, so to say. I will look it up. Of course, I put the links in the show notes, and I'm so happy that we had our interview. Please reach out to Dave. He's amazing. Check out all the links. And this was our interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I see you in the next episode.